One of the most frustrating things that I see and hear from professionals, from trainers, from coaches, from nutritionists, from people that are trying to help people to lose weight is that you just need to eat less. Because do you not think that people have tried to eat less and they keep falling off the wagon, or they're trying to eat less and they think they're doing that and they get more frustrated? It doesn't always work as easy as that. When we look at science, we know you have to be in a calorie deficit to lose weight. There's it's black and white. There's no two ways about it. You have to be eating less calories than the calories you burn for energy throughout the day in order to lose weight. And many people try to do this. Many people try to cut out foods and they fail. They then try to increase the amount of calories that they burn during the day, usually by doing higher stressed exercises, higher stress based exercises like cardiovascular exercise. And they try and they think, oh, I'm going to go on this machine and this cross trainer is going to bump up and show that I've burnt 300, 400 calories an hour. So then I can lose weight. Or they start tracking their food and they get frustrated because they're tracking their food and they're not losing weight. Now, one of the things that used to really, really annoy me when I was trying to lose weight years ago, when I was over 100 pounds overweight, and that was that no one seemed to understand the psychological impact of me trying to lose weight, what it actually felt like to be addicted to foods, what it actually felt like to try to keep away from certain foods. But every time that thought came around, that I would salivate around that food, I would be thinking about that food. And when I was in an office environment and people brought food in for birthdays, what it was like to try and refrain and restrain myself from eating that food. It was horrible. It was a full-time job and that was stressful. And there was only a certain amount of willpower that I would have. And that was before even having a family. It was hard enough then. So I would end up being waking up and I would be tired because I'd had a poor night's sleep, drive to work and get frustrated and there'd be some road rage and I would be more stressed out. I was losing the ability to refrain from that food. And then this psychological aspect came in, is that if I have that food, that's going to make me feel better. And I had to deal with that sort of thing. First off, what I had to do in order to drop a big chunk of weight is that I had to recognize that something was going on. And I feel that is truly the first step, to recognize that I've got this problem around food. And if I want to get to where I want to be, where I want my body to look, where I want my body to feel, how I want to feel up here mentally, I had to recognize that I was a different person, shall we say, with this food around there, which sounds extreme. It sounds massively, massively extreme. But why was I craving this food? And a lot of it turned out to be an emotional connection of these sugary foods that my nan used to give me when I was a kid. And I wanted to crave that closeness, that family, that hug that that family gives us. And it never really came. Now, if you don't know my backstory, when I was 15, my dad passed away. Suddenly at 47, he was stressed out. He had a stroke. He passed away. And it turns out that's the reason I do what I do now. But it didn't help back then when I was emotionally addicted to these foods that I used to have when I went around my nan's and watch Match of the Day and have crisps and have chocolate and have sweets and fizzy cola bottles and all these sorts of things. And then you'd wake up in the morning and first thing you'd have your cup of tea with a plate of biscuits. Oh, how our nans used to look after us, right? And all these things. So every time I got stressed and I wanted that comfort that came from that young Ollie, that family situation, the comfort of being around my nans where I was nanny's little soldier, as people used to joke about, that came from craving these foods. So I had to deal with this insecurity of like, what is actually going on up here? But also, when we actually look at it deeper, we need to keep in a calorie deficit if we want to lose weight. There's no two ways about it. So how do we make sure we're able to do that? Because so many trainers, nutritionists, dietitians, whoever's working with you, health coaches, whatever. They're going to tell you, you just need to eat less. But what if, like me, you've got ADHD and you go for that dopamine hit for that food every single time? And that's what is actually bringing that dopamine hit. And you crave more and more dopamine, that you're just going to have more and more foods. Well, we have to look at, what are we actually intaking? Now, if you are neurodivergent, you may have a thing called ARFID, which is avoidance of restrictive food intake disorder, which I have to a degree, where it's not just easy to have 20 different vegetables, even though that might be the thing you need to do, but the textures of food, the smells of food, the certain tastes of food, the temperatures of food, food mixing together, all these different things, the sensory overload of different foods is a thing we need to work on. So therefore, we need to take that into account. If someone's used to having two different types of food, we need to try to get a third one in there. And we need to look at, how can we eat more nutrient dense foods rather than these foods that are amazing for memories, maybe from our childhood, these sugars, but they don't have many nutrients in that are going to, one, fill us up, two, satiate us so we're not hungry for later, three, they're going to help manage our blood sugar levels, and four, they're not going to cause a crash further down the line that causes brain fog and all these sorts of things. So how can we do that? Well, we need to make sure that we are getting regular food. We need to make sure it's real food as much as possible. It's not to say you don't have any of these more sweet treats, shall we call them, but we need to make sure we are eating real food. And a lot of the times I see people eating low protein. So they're not getting their meats in, their dairy, their eggs, or these things. And as a result, their glucose levels are all over the show, which is causing more stress and having issues further down the line. Now, one of the most underappreciated things when it comes to improving your health, when it comes to weight loss or following any health or fitness journey, is having your family on board. Now, I have a very supportive wife. I have a very supportive family that if I want to go through a phase of trying to drop weight or build muscle, or maybe it's run a half marathon or whatever phase it is, I explain to them, this is what I want to do. This is why I want to do it. And my wife is usually on board. And I want to be there for her as well. We've gone through some amazing things over the years, and we've tried to support each other through them. Now, unfortunately, not everyone has this at home where they have that supportive family. But some of the times, what we have to do is just learn to communicate a bit better. Learn to communicate rather than saying, I'm going to go to the gym 4 times a week, or I'm going to go on this diet. Say what it actually means. That person you love the most, other than yourself, say what it actually means when you look in the mirror and you see things that you want to improve on. Say to them, look, I just do not feel confident where I'm at the moment. Maybe it's you've got some extra weight around your hips and you don't like the love handles there. Say to them that I don't feel confident when I'm going in the bedroom and we're having sex, whatever it is that is the truth that is going on. I say these things because these are things that I've had to say to my wife in the past. Didn't feel confident with my top off. Didn't feel confident naked. These sorts of things. The things where we should feel okay with doing that with those around us. So if we can explain to them and communicate why we actually want to spend a few £100s a month on our health, not just to be less reactive, to have more energy, to have more sex drive, to be there for our kids, to have more health, to have lower sickness, to have higher immunity, all these things. If we can communicate that to our loved ones, then we're going to find we get more support from them. So I highly recommend you try and do it. And if you are someone whose loved one comes to them, probably not going to be watching this video first one, but try and take him seriously. Too many husbands not taking their wives seriously and wives not taking their husbands seriously as to why they want to do things. But try it. Just listen to him. And if you are neurodivergent, try not to cut their sentences off. It can be very frustrating. Believe me. As someone who's autistic and has ADHD, I get frustrated when I cut people's sentences off. And also I get frustrated when people cut my sentences off. So just try and sit back and listen and resonate with them. Another thing we can do is be realistic with our goals. Don't get to 4 weeks from your holiday and expect to drop 20 pounds. It's not realistic. You're going to have to smash yourself. You're going to cause a lot more stress. And why do we want to even drop that weight anyway? If we look long term, if we look over the course of a year and we look at creating this calorie deficit, which is a small calorie deficit, which is like 100 calories a day or something, then that will help you over the course of a year. If we actually look into that, like say, for example, you had 100 calories a day, it's obviously going to be 36,500. Thankfully, I can still do maths. 36,500. Now, say some days you didn't do it. Say it was only 30,000 calories. Well, if you look at a pound of fat is 3,500. That's 8.5 pounds of fat by just cutting 100 calories a day. You could do that by cutting some sauce out. You could do that by cutting some sugar out of your tea or coffee. You could do it by cutting out a certain calorific drink or something. Maybe just having 10 grams less of like a spoonful less of whatever bit of chocolate you have, all these sorts of things. Find the lowest hanging fruit. I've had clients that have had a packet of polos a day. Now, that packet of polos, they've switched for like a sugar-free one, which is half the calories. Now, as a result, they're looking at, and again, this is based on science. This is based on if you only burn calories from fat, which isn't the case. You mix up the amount of calories you burn from fats, proteins, and carbs. But say, for example, pound of fat is 3,500 calories. This guy is going to burn an extra like 40 odd thousand calories just by switching to that sugar-free polo. Another guy, in fact, my training partner, and he won't mind me saying this, is that he was coming to the training session with a full bottle of Lucozade, like full Lucozade Sport, which is meant if you go really hard and go have endurance sessions and stuff like that. And we push ourselves in the gym, but honestly, we don't push ourselves enough to require to have that amount of calories. But he said it's his treat. I said, okay, get the 0 calorie version. As a result, training 4 times a week. He's traveling multiple weeks a year. So we actually worked out again, he was around 40 odd thousand calories a year just by switching that one little thing, not changing his diet elsewhere or anything like that, just by switching that. So being realistic, he knows that's a no-brainer. That's something he cannot fail on, to just simply get a 0 calorie drink rather than having these high sugar drinks that he doesn't need. It's just a treat, as he says. So find that lowest hanging fruit and use that and do that consistently. It's not going to be painful. You can do it. You can work on that one little habit and make it consistent. Another thing that we have to look at, especially when I work with my female clients, especially when they're still cycling, is that we need to work around hormones. And it's specifically looking at why your body is putting on weight, lowering weight, recognizing what it does. Just so when you are getting to that point in your cycle, whether it's the week before your period, whether it's when you're coming onto your period, every woman has been different with the amount of water weight that they put on before the period. Some have been lucky and not put any water weight on, but it's recognizing it is just that. It's just water coming on. So it's not fat. You haven't failed. It's water weight. So tracking your cycle and tracking your weight throughout that cycle can really start to give you ideas of what to expect. And I've found working with female clients, and especially perimenopause as well, it gets a little bit harder when there's not quite as consistent a cycle. But knowing what you were like before you got to the perimenopause age, years, and then like post menopause as well, just seeing what hormones have done with your weight, water weight, and so forth, allows you to realize that that 3 pound gain has literally been water and it's been hormones, and there's not anything you can do about it. It's not fat gain. You haven't failed. It's your body doing what it's amazingly designed for, what God designed it to do with cycling with hormones and then putting water weight on. So tracking this stuff leaves clues as to what is actually going on. So if we look at this, it's not as simple as just don't eat as much. You want to lose weight? Don't eat as much. I wish it was as simple. I wish you could just simply say, I'm just going to lose weight. I'm going to eat less. Scientifically, it should be the case, but it's finding out how do we make it the easiest way to allow you to be in a calorie deficit that causes the least amount of stress, that is the most sustainable, that is the most in line with your family life, not just your life and your business life, but your family life, and that works for you. Now, if you need support with that, simply drop me a message.